Westworld was not just another science fiction western, it was a technological nightmare that nearly destroyed everyone involved. Behind the glossy facade of Delos Amusement Park, a production was erupting into chaos helicopters, crashing, actors nearly dying, and groundbreaking technology threatening to derail the entire project. What audiences saw as a seamless vision of a robot-run future was actually a battlefield of creative conflicts, studio interference, and dangerous practical effects that left crew members injured and careers hanging in the balance. Today, we are pulling back the curtain on Michael Crichton's directorial debut with 20 weird facts about Westworld that will change how you see this science fiction classic forever. And stick around until the end for a bonus fact that reveals the dark secret behind the film's most iconic sequence. Hit that subscribe button and let's ride into the glitch-filled world of Westworld. Number 20, a helicopter crash nearly killed multiple crew members. During filming of the aerial sequences, Westworld was not just experiencing technical difficulties, it was facing real danger. A helicopter carrying a camera crew crashed during filming, narrowly avoiding a catastrophe that could have killed multiple people. The incident occurred while capturing shots of the park's vast landscapes. Mechanical failure sent the helicopter spiraling toward the ground, but the pilot's quick thinking prevented a fatal crash. What audiences did not know was that several crew members were injured, and the production was shut down for weeks. The accident created tension on set, with many crew members questioning the safety of continuing. Crichton had to fight with studio executives who wanted to shut down production entirely. The helicopter crash was not just a production setback, it was a traumatic event that cast a shadow over the entire filmmaking process and influenced the darker tone of the finished film. Number 19. The gunslinger's face was actually burned during filming. The iconic scene where the gunslinger's face is burned away was not movie magic. It was a dangerous practical effect that went horribly wrong. During filming, the special effects team used a chemical compound to create the melting effect on Brynner's face mask. What audiences did not know was that the reaction was more intense than anticipated, causing actual burns to Brynner's face through the protective layers. The actor, ever the professional, continued filming despite the pain, creating one of cinema's most disturbing death scenes. The incident was not just a technical mishap, it was a near disaster that could have permanently disfigured one of Hollywood's most iconic actors. The raw agony visible in the scene was not just acting, it was real pain captured on film. This dangerous practical approach exemplified the film's commitment to visceral effects over safety, a philosophy that would become increasingly rare as CGI replaced practical effects in later decades. Number 18. The studio hated the script and nearly killed the project. Westworld was not greenlit easily. It was rejected multiple times by MGM executives who found the concept too bizarre and potentially offensive. The initial script contained graphic violence and sexual content that studio heads deemed inappropriate for mainstream audiences. MGM's production chief demanded extensive rewrites, specifically targeting the scenes where the androids malfunction and attack guests. What audiences did not know was that these were the very scenes that made the film powerful. Crichton fought back, threatening to walk away from the project entirely. The standoff lasted for weeks, with the film hanging in the balance. Finally, a compromise was reached. Some of the most graphic elements were toned down, but the core concept remained intact. This battle over creative control set the tone for a production filled with conflicts between director and studio. Number 17. Michael Crichton's vision was constantly undermined by studio executives. Westworld was not the film Michael Crichton wanted to make. It was the film studio executives allowed him to make. Throughout production, MGM executives constantly interfered with Crichton's creative vision, demanding changes to tone, pacing, and even character motivations. What audiences did not know was that these conflicts reached a breaking point during editing, when executives recut the film against Crichton's wishes. The director's original version was darker and more philosophical, with greater emphasis on the ethical implications of artificial intelligence. The studio version streamlined these elements in favor of more action and suspense. This creative battle was not just artistic disagreement, it was a fundamental clash of visions about what science fiction should be. Crichton's experience on Westworld directly influenced his later career, leading him to demand greater creative control on projects like Jurassic Park. Number 16. The film's ending was completely reshaped by test audiences. Westworld's iconic ending was not what Michael Crichton originally envisioned. It was completely reshaped by test audience reactions that forced a last-minute reshoot. The original conclusion featured a more ambiguous ending where the fate of the survivors was left uncertain. What audiences did not know was that test screenings produced overwhelmingly negative reactions to this conclusion, with viewers finding it unsatisfying and confusing. The studio demanded a more definitive resolution, leading to the addition of the final scene where the survivors emerge from the control room. This reshoot was not just a minor tweak, it was a fundamental change to the film's thematic conclusion, shifting from a meditation on technological uncertainty to a more traditional horror movie resolution. The conflict between artistic vision and audience expectations was not just a creative difference, it was a battle over what makes a satisfying ending. Number 15. The budget was so small, they had to cut corners everywhere. Westworld was not a blockbuster production. It was a shoestring operation with a mere $1.25 million budget, less than half of what most science fiction films commanded in the early 1970s. The financial constraints forced Crichton to make devastating compromises. The Roman world and medieval world sections of the park received minimal screen time because the production could not afford proper sets. The futuristic control center was created with surplus computer equipment borrowed from a local university. What audiences saw as a sleek, high-tech facility was actually a cobbled-together mess of outdated technology. The tight budget even affected the casting. Many supporting roles were filled with non-union actors willing to work for scale. Despite these limitations, Crichton's resourcefulness turned financial constraints into creative advantages, forcing him to focus on story over spectacle. Number 14. Yul Brynner's Gunslinger costume was a recycled prop. The iconic black outfit worn by Yul Brynner's Gunslinger was not custom designed for Westworld. It was the exact same costume Brynner wore 7 years earlier in The Magnificent Seven. This was not a creative choice, but a budget-cutting measure that became legendary. The costume's weathered appearance and distinctive design gave the Gunslinger an immediate visual authority that connected to Western film history. What audiences did not know was that the costume was literally falling apart during filming. The leather had deteriorated from years of storage, requiring constant repairs between takes. Brynner himself had to be sewn into the costume for some scenes because the zippers no longer functioned. This recycling of a classic Western costume created an unintentional but powerful connection between traditional Westerns and the new technological frontier Crichton was exploring. Number 13. The Gunslinger's movements were based on Brynner's previous roles. The distinctive robotic movements of Yul Brynner's Gunslinger were not just random mannerisms. They were carefully choreographed by Brynner himself, who drew inspiration from his previous roles in The Magnificent Seven and The King and I. Brynner intentionally created a performance that blended his iconic Western persona with mechanical precision. What audiences did not know was that Brynner spent weeks studying actual robotics and automation to perfect the character's movement. He even consulted with engineers from NASA to understand how machines would realistically move and react. This dedication to authenticity created one of cinema's most memorable android performances. The Gunslinger was not just a villain, he was a technological marvel brought to life through Brynner's meticulous attention to detail. The character's unique physicality became so influential that it continues to inspire android portrayals in films and television today. Number 12. The film's most iconic line was ad-libbed by Yul Brynner in a moment of frustration. Boy, I'd give $1 for a bullet. The Gunslinger's most memorable line was not in the original script. It was ad-libbed by Yul Brynner during a moment of frustration with the production. The line came during a particularly difficult scene where Brynner was struggling with the heavy costume and restrictive movements required for his character. What audiences did not know was that Brynner muttered the line out of genuine exasperation, not as planned dialogue. Michael Crichton, recognizing its perfect fit for the character, immediately incorporated it into the scene. This spontaneous moment was not just a happy accident, it was a perfect encapsulation of the Gunslinger's character, blending Western toughness with the cold calculation of a machine. The line became so iconic that it was referenced in countless other films and television shows. Number 11, the infrared vision sequence was technologically revolutionary. Westworld's most famous sequence, the Gunslinger's infrared point of view, was not just clever filmmaking. It was a technological breakthrough that would change cinema forever. Crichton and his team developed a completely new process to create the computer-generated imagery using actual computer technology to generate the pixelated vision effect. What audiences did not know was that this was one of the first uses of digital image processing in a feature film. The process was so complex and time-consuming that it took weeks of work to produce just a few minutes of footage. The computer equipment needed was so massive that it had to be housed in a separate facility. This groundbreaking technique paved the way for the CGI revolution that would transform filmmaking in the following decades. The infrared vision sequence was not just a cool effect, it was the birth of modern visual effects. Go ahead and like and subscribe because we are just getting to the most shocking facts about Westworld. The next revelations will change everything you thought you knew about this science fiction classic, including the secret connection to Disneyland and the real World War II junk used to build the future. Number 10, the electronic score was a revolutionary soundscape. The electronic score was not just background music, it was a revolutionary soundscape that used cutting-edge synthesizer technology to create the film's unsettling atmosphere. Composer Fred Karlin employed the Moog synthesizer and theremin rare instruments in film scoring at the time to produce the otherworldly, glitchy audio effects representing the android's internal processes. What audiences did not know was that these electronic elements were mixed with traditional Western orchestration, creating a jarring audio collision that mirrored the film's visual clash of genres. The synthesizer sounds were not just futuristic flair, they were designed to represent the cold, logical mind of the machines, often playing in counterpoint to the emotional human drama on screen. This innovative approach to film scoring was not just experimental, it was a narrative device, using sound to blur the line between human and artificial intelligence in a way that audiences could feel rather than see. Number 9. The film's computer was actually a navigational system from a World War II bomber. The futuristic computer system that controls Westworld was not cutting-edge technology, it was actually a navigational system from a World War II bomber that the production team borrowed from a military surplus store. What audiences did not know was that this piece of outdated equipment was chosen specifically because it looked impressive but was completely non-functional. The blinking lights and complex controls were all for show, with no actual computing power behind them. The production team had to manually create the appearance of computer monitoring by strategically placing lights and having crew members operate switches off camera. This clever deception was not just a budget-saving measure, it was a stroke of creative genius that made the control room feel authentic, despite using obsolete technology. The irony of using World War II technology to represent futuristic automation perfectly captured the film's theme of technological advancement built on outdated foundations. Number 8. The production used real Western film locations and faced extreme danger. Westworld was not filmed on a studio backlot. It was shot on location at actual Western film sets, including the famous old Tucson studios in Arizona. This decision was not just for authenticity, it was a budget necessity that created unexpected challenges. The remote locations meant dealing with extreme weather conditions, including temperatures that soared above 110 degrees. What audiences did not know was that the heat was so intense that the android costumes, particularly the heavy synthetic materials used for the Gunslinger outfit, became dangerously hot for the actors. Yul Brynner suffered from heat exhaustion multiple times, requiring medical attention between takes. The production also had to contend with dust storms, flash floods, and even a rattlesnake invasion of the set. These real-world hardships were not just inconveniences, they were life-threatening conditions that added genuine danger to an already changing shoot, mirroring the film's theme of technology versus nature. Number 7. The film's theme park concept was directly inspired by Disneyland. Westworld was not born from pure imagination. It was directly inspired by Michael Crichton's visit to Disneyland, where he became fascinated by the audio animatronic figures in attractions like the Pirates of the Caribbean and the Hall of Presidents. What audiences did not know was that Crichton initially conceived Westworld as a horror story set in an actual theme park, with the robots malfunctioning in ways that mirrored real-world technical failures he had witnessed. The Dulles Park was not just a fictional creation, it was a dark reflection of Disneyland's carefully controlled environment, with the pristine facade hiding potential disasters. Crichton even incorporated specific details from his Disneyland visit, including the behind-the-scenes areas where visitors were not meant to see. This real-world inspiration gave the film an unsettling authenticity that resonated with audiences familiar with theme parks. Number 6, the film's success led to a troubled sequel. Westworld was not meant to have a sequel. The original ending left no room for continuation, with the Gunslinger completely destroyed. But the film's unexpected box office success changed everything. MGM immediately demanded a sequel, forcing writers to contrive a way to bring back the popular android villain. The result was Future World, 1976, a troubled production that suffered from creative conflicts and budget issues. What audiences did not know was that Yul Brynner only agreed to return for a brief cameo appearance, demanding an exorbitant salary that ate up a significant portion of the sequel's budget. The sequel also replaced the original director and most of the creative team, resulting in a film that lacked the vision and impact of its predecessor. The rushed production and creative compromises of Future World demonstrated how studio interference could undermine artistic vision. Number 5, the film's success led to a short-lived TV series that nearly ruined the franchise. Westworld was not just a standalone film. It spawned a 1980 television series that was so disastrous it nearly killed the franchise entirely. The series, titled simply Beyond Westworld, was rushed into production to capitalize on the film's cult status. What audiences did not know was that the show was plagued with problems from the start. The budget was slashed, the original creative team was replaced, and the network demanded major changes to make it more family-friendly. The result was a watered-down version of the original concept that lacked the dark tone and philosophical depth that made the film special. The series was canceled after just 5 episodes, becoming one of the most expensive failures in early 1980s television. This debacle was not just a creative failure, it was a financial disaster that made studios hesitant to revisit the Westworld concept for decades. Number 4, the film influenced the creation of the first-person shooter genre. Westworld was not just a film, it was a blueprint for an entire video game genre. The infrared vision sequence, with its pixelated point of view perspective, directly inspired the creation of first-person shooter games. What audiences did not know was that programmers at Atari were specifically tasked with creating a game based on this sequence. The result was Battlezone, 1980, one of the first-person perspective video games. The influence extended far beyond this single game, helping establish visual conventions that would define the shooter genre for decades. The gunslinger's relentless pursuit of his targets, viewed from his own perspective, created a template for countless video game protagonists. Westworld's impact on gaming was not just incidental, it was foundational, proving that cinema could inspire entirely new forms of interactive entertainment. This cross-media influence demonstrates how the film's innovative visual language transcended traditional boundaries. Number 3, the gunslinger's relentless pursuit was inspired by real-life predatory behavior. The gunslinger's unceasing pursuit of the protagonist was not just a plot device. It was directly inspired by Michael Crichton's study of predatory behavior in nature, particularly the hunting patterns of sharks. What audiences did not know was that Crichton had recently returned from a marine biology expedition where he observed great white sharks hunting. He incorporated the same principles, relentless pursuit, pattern recognition, and adaptation to the prey's behavior into the gunslinger's character development. This was not just a creative choice, it was a scientifically informed approach to creating a believable and terrifying antagonist. The gunslinger's movements, decision-making processes, and even his vision were all based on actual predatory behavior. The film was not just science fiction, it was an exploration of the fundamental principles of predation. Number 2, the film's central theme was largely misunderstood by contemporary critics. Westworld was not just a simple science fiction thriller about robots gone wrong. It was a complex meditation on the relationship between humanity and technology that was largely misunderstood by contemporary critics. Most reviews focused on the film's entertainment value while missing its deeper philosophical questions about artificial intelligence and human responsibility. What audiences did not know was that Crichton was specifically exploring the ethical implications of creating sentient beings for entertainment purposes. The film was not just warning about technological malfunction, it was questioning the morality of treating any being, artificial or not, as disposable entertainment. This nuanced approach to science fiction was ahead of its time, predating similar explorations in films like Blade Runner and The Matrix. The critical misunderstanding was not just a failure of interpretation, it was evidence of how Westworld's sophisticated themes were too advanced for 1970s film criticism. Number 1. The original title would have changed everything. Westworld was not always called Westworld. The film's original working title was ADAM, Automated Domestic Android Man, a name that would have completely changed audience expectations. Crichton initially conceived the project as a psychological thriller, focusing on the artificial intelligence of the androids, not the Western setting. The title change came late in pre-production when MGM executives realized the Western element had more commercial appeal. This was not just a simple marketing decision, it fundamentally shifted how the film was promoted and received. The generic science fiction title ADAM would have attracted a different audience entirely, potentially dooming the film's box office prospects. What audiences did not know was that this last-minute title change saved the film from obscurity and created the franchise we know today. Bonus fact, the film's success directly led to Michael Crichton writing Jurassic Park. Westworld was not just a standalone success, it was the direct inspiration for Michael Crichton's most famous work, Jurassic Park. What virtually no one knows is that Crichton conceived Jurassic Park as essentially Westworld with dinosaurs. The thematic similarities are striking. Both involve high-tech amusement parks where technology fails catastrophically, putting visitors in mortal danger. Crichton explicitly stated in interviews that he wanted to explore the same concept of entertainment technology turning against its creators, but on a grander scale. The DNA of Westworld is evident throughout Jurassic Park, from the automated tour vehicles to the comprehensive system failures. This connection was not just a creative evolution, it was a direct continuation of the same philosophical questions about humanity's relationship with technology. Westworld was not just a film, it was the prototype for Crichton's entire career, establishing the themes and narrative patterns that would define his most famous works. Westworld was not just a science fiction film, it was a technological prophecy that warned us about our relationship with artificial intelligence decades before it became a global concern. What began as a troubled production filled with accidents, conflicts, and budget constraints evolved into a visionary work that continues to influence how we think about technology and entertainment. The film's legacy extends far beyond its initial run, inspiring everything from video games to theme park attractions to a critically acclaimed HBO series. Its exploration of what happens when our technological creations develop minds of their own feels more relevant today than ever before.